I just got myself a new Nexus 5X phone, so I can start running my applications on Marshmallow, get all that goodness. So the first application I thought I'd run is going to be the camera intent application. So let's give it a go. Okay, so far on here, all I've changed is the build.gradle module app here. And I've just adjusted the compile SDK version, build tools, min SDK version and target SDK version to 23. And I've set my application ID to compat camera intent. That was a little bit incorrect before. So that's all I'm changed. So let's run it and let my application get all the Marshmallow goodness. So click on run. Application started up. Let me record what's happening on the screen there. And don't have my cup of green tea, glass of water, boring. Okay, so let's take a photograph of a glass of water. How interesting is that? So press take photo. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. As we saw in the intro, I tried to run my camera intent tutorial application on the new Nexus 5X running Marshmallow, and it failed. I got a camera error, and that's something that all developers out there can expect to see. And the reason for it is due to the new runtime permissions model. So previously to Marshmallow, all the permissions were set up when the user installs the application. So the user goes to Google Play Store, for example, selects an application, and before he installs the application, there'll be a big list of permissions: location, storage, contacts, huge big list. And a lot of users probably just ignored that list, installed the application. But some of those permissions are quite powerful and do hold the user's private data as well. So care and highlights should be noted for particular permissions such as those. So with Marshmallow, it's had a huge big overhaul. So no longer will you get the big huge list of permissions to install. What will happen is when you actually run your application, if you require a certain permission, or if the application requires a certain permission, it'll give a pop-up box and say, oh, we need this permission. Will you allow it or deny it? And so the user can actually say, oh, yes, I want location fit to application, or deny that. And so there's been a huge, massive change. And you can actually more fine control on what the application is able to use from your device and what it's not able to use. So for my example there, it's my camera intent application. Basically, it's using two things. One's the storage, saving a image to storage. That's permission. Another one's the camera itself. So we've got two types of permissions there. And the problem I've got there is I haven't enabled runtime permissions for actually saving the image. So when I click take a photo, I'm actually creating a file inside external storage to save the image to, and I haven't actually created a runtime permission for that. So let's make a start on that now. Okay, I got, just before I move on that, if we look at my log here and go down here, you can see we've got an IO section, permission denied. So permission denied, that's a good clue that if we're running on Marshmallow, we haven't provided sort of the permission for the user to accept or deny, and in this case it's write external storage. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get a dependency to the ContextCompat library, and to get that, if I go to my Safari, and it's a version 7 app compat library is where I can get some of the libraries for the runtime permissions. So what I need is I need to provide this to Gradle. And so this is under support library features here. I'm just going to paste this in and we'll go back to Android Studio and compile and paste it in there. Now I need to resync Gradle. And it's telling me I don't have the latest version. I had the latest version yesterday. What do you know? Let me just update that. Okay, Gradle is now synced. Okay, let me go to my camera intent activity. And if I just search for take photo, it's right there actually. So I've got take photo here. Here's where we actually set up our file for the image to be copied to. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to move all the code outside of take photo. Take photo is just a non-click button view. So if I just create a new method here, we just call it call camera app, and just let me put all the code inside take photo, put it inside this method. Paste that in there. Okay, so take photo is basically the on click of the button view. So first thing I want to do is I want to check if I've got permissions to write to external storage. So what I can do here is I can do if, and now we're going to call the ContextCompat, and now we'll call checkSelfPermission. So we're going to check to see if permission's been granted to write to external storage for this application. So we can pass an activity, which is the context. And now it's asking us for the permission. The permission will be under manifest.permission and it's write external storage. So we want to do a check to see if that has been granted. So go to Package Manager and check to see if permission's been granted. And if the permission has already been previously granted, we'll save the granted or denied permissions for our application. We can then call camera app. But if not, if we've actually, let me put an else in that. Now, if we've denied permission, we can put a bit of code in there just to put up information to the user to say, oh look, you denied this previously, but this is the reason why I want this permission. So we do. So we call shouldShowRequestPermissionRationale, long API name, and basically it's showing the rationale for why we need this permission. Call manifest.permission. And let's put an if in there. This will return a boolean. Go back to the end there. So if this is true, if we want to show the rationale behind why we need permission, in other words, we've been denied, let's just send a message to the user to say why we need this. And so what should I say to the user? I need external storage permission to save images. Oh, spelling's terrible today. External storage permission required to save images. Let's complete the toast. Show the toast. Okay. So if we've been denied previously before, we provide an extra message saying why we need it. If not, if it's the first time that we've seen this message, such as your first time installing and running the application, we can just request permissions. Okay, it's going to take a few variables here. One's going to be the string, so it could be a number of permissions. So if we create a new string array here, and inside that put the manifest write external storage. Cool. Okay, and the second one's going to be a request code. So when we request permissions, it's going to go into the system, Android system, and Android system's going to put a asynchronous response back to us whether or not the request for the permissions has been granted or not. So we need a request code just to track this particular permission request. So if I go up to here, we're going to add another request code here. Change that name. What should I call it? Request. It's request external storage result. It's something that means something to you. And let's give this 1. And let's go back into take photo. Latest version of Android Studio seems a bit buggy. Anyway, so let's put that permission in there. Okay, that's it for applying for our request. Now, remember I just mentioned before, if the request is granted or denied, it will come back in a asynchronous callback. So let's set up that callback now. Okay, so we're going to override. Now, let me see if I can remember that it's on request permissions result callback. And first thing it's going to want is the request code. So we set up the request code just before. So that's called a request code. And second thing is going to be a string of the permissions. It's an argument. Don't do string. Oh, one of these typing days. Okay, so it's going to be string, and it's going to be permissions. And the other one's going to be a string of ints, which is going to be grant results. It's going to be an int, and it's called grant results. Okay, the first thing we want to do, we want to check that we're getting our request code we sent in the request permissions method call. We want to see if we're getting that returned to us. Let's check that. So if request code is equal to request external storage result. Okay, so this will tell us that our request has come back. Now the next thing we want to see if the result of our request has been successful or not. So do another check. Call grant results. It's going to be the first item in the array. And we'll do a check with the package manager and request granted. So if this is good, it means we've been granted request. We can then call the camera app as such. Now, if the request hasn't been granted to us, we also want to notify the user that we haven't been granted the request. We can't write the photos to external storage. So let's set up a toast for that. So let's go to else. Another toast. And let's just say external right permission has not been granted. Cannot save images. Something to that effect. And then underneath that, this is set for the link for the toast and display the toast as such. And we've got one more final thing to do here, and basically we need to call the super constructor in the else here. So onRequestPermissionResult, and this pass in the arguments we set up in the API call. Permissions and grant results as such. Okay, that should be it. Okay, let's try running that and see what happens. Application's now started. Let's record that so you can see what's happening. And attempt to take another photograph of a glass of water. I really need that photo of the glass of water, it's important for me. So select take photo. Now you can see we've got a pop-up box and it says allow camera intent to access photos, medias, basically access the external storage. Let's click allow. No, okay, now I'm getting more progress. I want to just use the default camera app. Camera app starting, take the photo, select that photo, and as you can see, the application, camera intent application, is now operating normal. So these are the sort of changes that you're going to have to make from Marshmallow onwards, thinking of how you provide your permissions to the users. Okay, just one other thing I'd just like to point out at this stage. Remember at the beginning of this tutorial I said we needed two permissions, one for external storage and the other one for the camera app itself. And you might be asking, well, why didn't you need to set up permissions for the camera app? And the reason for that is, inside the camera app, we are actually using an intent to call another application. Now, if you use an intent to call another application, it's up to that other application's permissions to be set up or not. So you can call out the other application, then the other application will say, oh, do you need, we need permissions to run that or not? Not this application. So the camera application already had the permissions set up and running, so I could just send an intent. So to get around permissions, if you need, you can send intents to other applications without requiring the code or the pop-up box itself. So we just used an intent here to use the functionality from the camera application. Okay, the next step is let's debug the code we put in there. Now I've granted permissions to it, the permissions already in there, they've been saved. So we need to ungrant permissions, and basically at the line at the bottom here we can revoke permissions as well. So I just need to, the two key things here is you've got the right package name and you're using the right permission there as well. So we've run this from the shell. We've revoked the permissions as such. So in theory, when we run the application again, we have to re-grant permissions. Okay, so next step is we wanted to debug, we wanted to step through the code changes we've made. So let's put in a breakpoint now and put in one there. So, and let's run debug. Application started. Let's see what happens when I take a photo. Okay, we're in the first one, so we're checking to see if we've got permissions or not. Remember, I've revoked the permissions, so I shouldn't have permissions. So let's step through. Okay, so if I had permissions, I would have called the camera app, everything would have worked fine. I don't have permissions. So now it's doing a check to see if I've denied permissions before. I haven't denied permissions before, so it's just going to the normal request permissions with the right external storage there. And we're also passing our result code we'll check on the onResult, onPermissionsResult callback. So let's carry on running that. Okay, I've now got the pop-up box there. Don't think you can clearly see that, but it's there. I'm going to click allow. Now I've gone to the onRequestPermissions results. Now come down. So first check I'm doing is my request code. Yep. Now I'm checking to see if I've got permission granted for the right external storage. Yes, I have. Now I can call the camera app. Continue on. Now we can call the camera. Take a photo of a glass of water. Accept that. What an incredible photo of a glass of water. Should be in a magazine. Okay, that's it. So I need to go through all my applications to make them compatible with Marshmallow using a similar sort of flow, but I will put that in tutorial form as well, so hopefully that can be a guide for you to show how to get your applications upgraded and future-proofed for Marshmallow. And hopefully it's given you a bit of an understanding of how the new permissions model works, the runtime permissions compared to static permissions when you installed the application from the Google Play Store. Anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already and you want to get notified of future tutorials coming out, click on that subscribe button down below. And surrounding me, you can also see my social media accounts. If you're running from a PC, you can click on those accounts as well. Follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, pin me on Pinterest, and drop in a note on Google Plus if you want. And directly above me is my website. So I normally do an accompanying article to these tutorials which has all the information on GitHub. I break down the code changes here to explain what's happening, so it's a centralized information of each tutorial. So if you are looking for more information, I do recommend you visit the site page as well, and there will be links on the video itself to that site page. Anyway, that's all for this one. Bye for now.